Hello everyone, I'm Brea Thorne. Welcome to the channel and welcome to my very first official PC review. Now what we're reviewing here, it was a PC that was sent to me a while back by iBUYPOWER. You may recognize it because you'll have seen it in a couple of videos recently where I'm showing you things that you want to do when you're first setting up your PC and things you don't want to do when first setting up your new gaming PC. There was meant to be more stuff earlier on, however, I happened to hurt my back moving this very PC shortly after getting it and filming the first unboxing stuff, which we'll get to in a second. Now this model in particular is the iBUYPOWER Ready system, the Maybe they would prefer that I say the SMRVRG201, but I think SMRVRG is kind of cute, all right? Now in this system we have an AMD Ryzen 5 5600X paired with a Gigabyte Vision RTX 3060 Ti. 16 gigs DDR4 3200. You get a 120mm all-in-one liquid cooler mounted to the back there, 3 RGB fans in the front. All of this is brought together by a fairly feature-rich MSI motherboard with a 1TB M.2 drive. The thing is, there's a lot to learn here, a lot to look at. And that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the processor and the GPU, because those have been reviewed so many times before. 3060 Ti's and the 5600X. You can find tons of reviews and benchmarks for those particular components. No, that's not the job here. The actual goal here is to evaluate the system as a whole, in particular with the case that it comes in. Now this case, this enclosure here, is specific to iBUYPOWER. It's the iBUYPOWER Slate Hako MR with tempered glass, as you know, on the front and on the side. Of course, I have that removed right now. And the question is, of course, is this case, does it have enough airflow for the components inside it? And not just these components. You see, this same case is used on systems up to $4,000 in price. So considering that the case is used across so many various systems, including very high-priced ones, we need to see if it can handle these components, much less ones that put out way more heat. And of course, since we are set out to learn, it is appropriate that our sponsor for the video is Skillshare. Now, Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes for the creative and the curious. It's for lifelong learners, beginners, pros, and dabblers. They're constantly adding premium classes with categories like animation, film and video, graphic design, web development, UI design, photography, and much more. And most of these classes are under 60 minutes total, with short lessons that you can fit into even the busiest schedule. And one class I keep coming back to because I'm really taking notes from this one. I look up to this guy and it's a fantastic class. That class is YouTube Success, Script, Shoot, and Edit with MKBHD by Marques Brownlee. Yes, that MKBHD. And it's one of those things where it's a rare look into how someone who's a hugely prolific and professional creator gives you the step-by-step process by which he creates the things that you enjoy. And whenever I'm stuck in my process, I sort of go back to his and watch this video to sort of shake things loose. Look at the way he takes notes. Look at some of the tools he uses. I can't exactly afford the rad robot arm camera that he has, but I can certainly appreciate it, that's for sure. So if you're thinking about getting into content creation, not even just YouTube, but just content creation in general, I highly recommend you check out this course. And guess what? You can check it out for free, because the first 1,000 people to click the link in the description below will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So get down there, click the link, and get started today. So speaking of getting started, let's get started at the beginning. Okay, now I want to make special mention of this. This was pretty much QC'd to be sent out for review. That means that we're not necessarily going to be looking at this in terms of this is what you would get in the build of the system itself, as in terms of how well it's cable managed and all that. They QC these things for review, and that's sort of understood. So looking here, we have a box here. Looks like it's of accessories. Oh, it looks like this might be for the GPU. Oh my goodness, this is the GPU. So they're actually doing this a little better. Look at that. That is beautiful. I'm very upset right now. I want to keep this. So yeah, in this case, it looks like they went ahead and removed the GPU for shipping. That's different from what I experienced. For me, they just used the expanding foam on the inside. So this is the newer to iBUYPOWER, the Slate Hako MR. They had the Slate before. This is another version of it with a different front panel. One of the things I have spoken with iBUYPOWER with since I began talking to them, of course, is airflow. Because I've been pretty vocal about how I feel about airflow and how important it is over aesthetics. So we're going to assume nothing. We'll run benchmarks, we'll do stress tests, we will see how it is, and if the airflow is inadequate for the heat generated by these components, of which this is a 5600X and 3060 Ti combo, if the airflow is inadequate to that, we're going to find some ways to improve on the airflow. So I have a couple things to say about this case already, but let's talk about the components first. So we have a B550A Pro motherboard. For a gaming system, B550 is just fine. XPG RAM, of course. So of course we got the power supply shroud here. USB 3.0 connector for the front panel, which we'll take a look at the front I/O here in a bit. And of course a reinforced PCIe X16, that's PCIe Gen 4. And a couple more 16s there, actually 3 more. There's a space to put up to, looks like a 360 millimeter all-in-one liquid cooler at the top. So this is a very flexible case that they can use for different configurations. Now, I will say this design may be a bit polarizing for some. Looks like it comes pre-broken, right? Crack going down the center. But it is mostly a solid glass panel. And some cases can have that and get great airflow, but they have to be built with that in mind. iBUYPOWER, thank you for being the first system integrator to send me a system to look at. When you're going to be testing a system, the best thing to do is to test it without making any changes first. You want to see what every customer is going to be getting. It looks like there's a small space at the bottom for airflow that could easily be enlarged, but it's mostly for gripping this to remove it. Go ahead and put my hand under here and just pull out, and then do the same for the top. And easily, you can remove your front panel. It's not pretty, but if you want an easy way to get much higher airflow here, removing that front panel is a great way to go, and then you just have this magnetic dust filter. But either way, you're going to have to remove this front panel somewhat frequently to clean your dust filter. So this features 2 USB 3 ports and split front panel audio. So you have a separate jack for the headphones and the microphone. Last thing to take a look at here, let's have a look at the cable management. So looking at this, generally what you want to see is whether the cables here go out past the sides of the frame. Could have been flattened a bit more, but it is decently cable managed. Of course, here's a little fan hub right here. I would have preferred to see some Velcro straps rather than twisty ties. That's definitely a grocery store type of twisty tie right there. But also Velcro straps are really nice for when you need to troubleshoot or replace a part. I cannot see what kind of power supply here is put in here, but of course it is not fully modular. That is not budgeted in for the price that you get these for. It looks like you have space for 2 up to 3.5-inch hard drives, and if you look here, there are mounting points for 2, 3, and 4 2.5-inch SATA 3 SSDs. Now there is an opening right here, which is nice for your GPU power, but what I'm concerned with here, and I'll go over this in more detail later on, is that they have used the pigtail, or the additional power that comes off of this, instead of running a separate PCIe power cable. Requires an 8-pin and a 6-pin. So this should be a separate PCIe power cable because those wires that those power cables are made out of are only rated for so much voltage to come through. And if you exceed that, you can have a problem. You can have melting jacket on that cable. You can have a problem with your power supply. These kinds of shortcuts right here can lead to that. It's not guaranteed to do that, but it can lead to that. Use a separate PCIe power cable for this. And if you're looking at a really high-end GPU that requires 3 8-pins, I hope you have a power supply that has 3 PCIe power connectors. Yeah, we'll start getting to some testing. Hope you guys like the first look here. But yeah, expect a lot more out of this. So now that I've actually had some time with the system, I will tell you, first off, I did take a lot more benchmarks than the ones I have now. When I switched systems, this was when I first got it, when I switched systems to the Artesian build system, something happened, it didn't transfer over, and I can't find those files, so no big deal. Because again, benchmarking this thing is not priority number one. These components have been benchmarked 100 times. I did use some benchmarks to stress test it though. So taking a look at the case here, it is quite good in certain ways. There's a lot of expandability there. There's a lot of room for exhaust along the top if you want to add some exhaust fans or upgrade your cooler, which we'll talk about more later. And it's a spacious case. It's just the issue is with it seems to be with the front panel, but not in the way that I expected. What I did was I did some stress testing. The CPU stress testing threw me for a loop because my impression was that I would stress test everything, and then when I took off the front panel, all the temperatures would get better. Well, the CPU was the exception to that, oddly enough. So what I mean by that is what I ran was Cinebench R23, and I ran the multi-core test for a long period of time to achieve thermal saturation, heat soak, whatever you want to call it, equilibrium. Yeah, I reached about 83 Celsius under load with the front panel on or off. That was a little bit odd. So I figured to myself, okay, no big deal. That's probably because there's so much opening here in the top, and this is right there in the back. It's receiving fresh air from there, and it's getting some air through the opening here in the side. Now, the 5600X has been said to have a max temperature, safe temperature of 90 to 95 degrees Celsius, so we're well within range here. That's even with a single-click overclock, an auto overclock through Ryzen Master. That's when I hit 83 Celsius, and that's with the front panel on or off. So what I realized then was that the limitation was the 120mm all-in-one liquid cooler. It is keeping it in check. It is plenty for this processor. However, it is, if you wanted to do any more thorough overclocking, we would quickly approach that 90-degree threshold, 95-degree threshold. So if you're looking to do that and you just want more thermal headroom, then something like this Master Liquid ML240L V2 RGB right here. This thing goes for about $65 to $67 if you order it online. It would be a pretty big upgrade to the cooling, and putting that thing in here would drop those temperatures. But it was when I got to the GPU testing, the GPU stress testing, that's when the gremlins really came out when it came to airflow, because you'll see the CPU fan on the radiator back there has plenty of open space. However, our GPU right here is facing down. It can get some air from these perforations back here in the PCIe slots and that on the side there. But for the most part, it's pretty much just dead space right there, and this fan right here is trying to feed it cool air and having trouble with that. So to give you an idea of what temperatures you want from your GPU, you don't really want to go above 80 degrees Celsius. If you're approaching 80 degrees Celsius and you're staying under it, you're probably okay. But most GPUs are configured in their firmware to dial back the frequencies whenever it starts to approach 80 degrees Celsius to help maintain a stable temperature and a reasonable temperature. So your GPU won't die if it hits 80 degrees, it's fine. It's just that it will start to slow down its performance to mitigate overheating. So what I found was with the front panel on, it pretty much maxed out to 80 degrees, and that was with me running the Heaven benchmark, which is an older benchmark, but great for stress testing a GPU. And when I took off the front panel, it dropped about 6 degrees Celsius. There's another step that you can take if you were to download MSI Afterburner, which is, even if it's not an MSI GPU, MSI Afterburner is a great tool for an NVIDIA GPU right here, and you can actually adjust the fan curve to be more aggressive at a lower temperature. And doing that, I was able to get the max temperature with the front panel off to 70 degrees Celsius. Now, when I talk about taking off the front panel, it's very easy to do, and it's no big deal. It looks might be divisive, haha, get it? But there's no denying that this right here is pretty much what's affecting GPU temperatures the most. There it goes. Be careful not to break this. And then this is what it looks like right here. You've got the holes here from where it actually connects the front panel. And there are several different holes, and you'll notice that there are some openings here that sort of don't make a whole lot of sense. Well, that's because the tooling for this case, meaning the actual design, each piece of it that's then pieced together, is actually used in a lot of iBUYPOWER's cases, and then they'll swap out the front panel. That's good news for expandability, because this case has spots for either 4 or 6 2.5-inch SSDs, or 4 2.5-inch SSDs and 2 mechanical hard drives. There's room for up to a 360 millimeter all-in-one liquid cooler on the top. There's room for a 360 radiator on the front. And you'll see that because I'll actually use that. Here's one of these that has a 12900K processor and a 360 millimeter all-in-one liquid cooler with a radiator on the front and push-pull fans, meaning 3 fans on the front, 3 fans on the back of the radiator. There's room for that in here. That's pretty nice in this case. The problem is the front panel. So my suggestion, have it like this. And if you don't like the look of this, just make something to cover it. You can even just cover it up with some black electrical tape. And just in a dark room, you won't even notice it. If you want to make it more uniform, just use one long piece and put it on there, and there you go. With the side panel closed, you're not going to get any extra dust getting in there. But really, it's the front panel design that kind of bothers me here. There's something you can do. I'll get to that in a moment. But what I do want to go over are, I did do some benchmarks, okay? And I benchmarked CSGO. I didn't get solid numbers out of it because this was like a weird level benchmark. I don't have a benchmark in place for it. But I saw it shoot up to over 400 frames per second in certain scenarios. And then when there was smoke out, it would go down to like 120 frames per second for a couple seconds. And then it would shoot right back up. So that was at 1080p testing. And if you're playing a competitive game of CSGO, if you're a competitive gamer, you're probably playing at 1080p, very high refresh rate. So this is perfect for that. This does great for that. Now, what I also tested was Far Cry 6 as a newer title, which is more GPU intensive. So there was much less of a swing in the frame rates here, and I tested it at several different resolutions. As I do more of these reviews, I'm going to start adding more benchmarks that I do. But there's one thing I want to cover before I get into those results, and that's kind of the second problem with this front panel here. And actually, I think something that would be more of a culprit over time. So you see here, we have a magnetic mesh filter. So your fans aren't just like exposed to dust. This is the kind of filter you want. It's very well made and it's very nice. Speaking of filters, if you are going to put a radiator at the top for top exhaust on an AIO, be sure to take this off. There is a thumb screw that normally holds it there, and remove this magnetic filter because you don't need filtration for exhaust, and that will actually restrict your exhaust some. So this is pretty well stuck in there, but you can just kind of pull it out right there and it comes out. Take that out, put this thing back on the top. Oh, of course, you want to mount your radiator first and then put that back on. On this though, there's something on the side of it, on the one spot where you can actually get intake, and you can see it right now. That is another mesh filter. And this is not like the flexible one there. This is an actual metal mesh filter, which I would say, guys, take this metal mesh material that you have and just put it here, right there. Just overdo it on airflow. It's not a bad thing if you do it right. But this right here, being another filter that is unnecessary. And what's going to happen is you're going to get, this one's a little finer. Okay, so the actual diameter of the holes in it are smaller. This one is larger, so basically larger pieces of dust, dust bunnies, things like that are gonna get stuck here over time. And this is a lot harder to take off and remove because you actually have to remove the front panel, then take off 1, 2, 3, 4 screws, take it off, then clean it, then clean in between each of these things, each of these little things right there. So what I did was I removed this and did all my Far Cry testing without it. And you know what? There was a slight improvement there. And in my stress testing as well, my regular GPU stress testing, it went down by about 2 degrees on average Celsius. Once I removed this, it was staying at about 78, 77 degrees, and though the frequencies were dropping a bit to start to scale back to keep it from getting to 80 degrees, it was never really getting under 1900 megahertz, which is good. Now, the, of course, ultimate cooling for the GPU is going to be just with the side panel off, because then it just has free airflow going in there. But let me tell you guys, an open air case like that, is just inviting a lot of dust and a lot of crap to get into your computer. Computers are designed to be closed and then have airflow designed to it. There are open air cases out there that are awesome. You just need to commit to cleaning your system. This is meant to be filtered. The problem with this, getting its air mostly from there, is that is not filtered air. It's pulling in dust if there's not enough positive pressure in the case. But anyway, now you know what I did. I took off that one extra filter, and I suggest you do the same no matter what, because you have a better filter right here. All you gotta do is pop this thing off or just leave it off, right? And then just pull this off, dust it off, rinse it out, whatever you wanna do, dry it up, put it right back on. Okay, now don't push hard. This is a flexible filter, and it'll put some stress on the hubs of the fans, but there is a couple millimeters of space there, so you should be okay. Now looking at the numbers here, running at 1080p resolution on low settings, we had an average of 136 FPS. Medium settings had an average of 123 FPS. High settings had an average of 109 FPS, and ultra settings had an average of 100 FPS at 1080p. I always talk about this though. The 3060 Ti can totally do 1440p easily. Okay, and this is a AAA title. Here are the frame rates. At 1440p, low settings, it was 133 frames per second. Medium settings, 110 frames per second. High settings, 100 frames per second. And ultra settings actually got 87 frames per second on a AAA title. Not as, you know, unoptimized as some other ones, where we're like, hey, if you get over 60, you're good. But at 1440p, the 3060 Ti is still an absolute beast, and I can highly recommend it. Now that we've kind of gone over this stuff, and I've given you my impressions of this case, I do want to address one thing. Guys, iBUYPOWER knows. They know about airflow. They understand airflow. This thing can work just fine with this front panel on. It will pull back on frequencies on the GPU in order to maintain a healthy temperature. Basically, it's trusting that the GPU will do that. The thing is, people, when asked, which one would you buy the one that looks like it works really well, or would you buy the one that looks really cool, subjectively speaking? Most people in your average focus group would say, ooh, I like the glass one. That's really cool. I think that's probably what gamers want. iBUYPOWER, let's be real, is the largest system integrator in the world, and they're selling working systems. This does work. I have my concerns with the 12th gen 12900K and 3090 system. That is a pretty scary thing to put behind a bunch of glass. It doesn't have alternate intake options. But all I gotta do is remove this thing. That's it. I think it looks actually really cool and like industrial like this. Now, add on some tape, maybe not so much, but don't let these holes worry you so much, because guess what you have back there? More unfiltered holes. You're gonna have to dust this thing out anyway. And that's pretty standard. And if you have the filter out for your exhaust, which is the right way to do it pretty much, if you have that filter out and your system is off, dust can settle into the system. So you're gonna have to dust it out anyway. So my take is, this looks super cool just like this. I don't have the side glass on. It looks more whole with the side glass on, because then you have this covered up right here and you're just seeing the front. I think this looks fine. I would rather it have better airflow and get better frame rates. But overall, I will say this. This is not for me to measure their build quality. This is not a secret shopper thing. I didn't buy it from them. They sent it to me for review, and I'm sending it right back. So you know that this thing was QC'd to heck and back. Like they made sure to cross all the I's, dot all the T's, and kept their nose clean on. That's what any company would do with a review sample. About the power supply, by the way, it is a generic power supply. Remember that a lot of these companies, quote unquote brand name companies, get their power supplies manufactured by these guys. And I looked up my master list when I saw the name of the power supply, the name of the manufacturer. The master list I use is on the LTT forums, and it's quite good. And this one was listed under the, sort of medium, mid-tier builds and lower and mid-tier builds. And it wasn't grayed out, which is good. That means it's fine. And they make power supplies for Corsair. So you get a Corsair, you get pretty much the same manufacturer as a power supply from this generic iBUYPOWER one. It's just that it's made directly for iBUYPOWER. I've had to adjust my own thinking on that, because I tend to forget some of these things when I'm like, oh, I prefer this one or whatever. If you want to get a power supply made by the name brand that you're getting, you got to get Seasonic. That's pretty much it. As far as I know, they're the only ones that do that, that are a big name. And they're also really good power supplies, some of the best you can get. Now, iBUYPOWER and I are not done working together. They're going to be sending me more stuff and some really exciting stuff. I will tell you guys, if any of you guys got this combo of 5600X and 3060 Ti, you're good. Do not worry when new stuff comes out or whatever. This was a great combo and it did everything I wanted to. It scored quite well across the board. And it's just a fantastic combo. Even the 5600X and 3060 is a great combo. Like a lot of the combos that you can get, that you can combine with the 5600X, still very good. This one's got some great performance behind it, and you'll be happy with it for a long time. 1080p or 1440p. So that's pretty much all I have to say about that. If you guys have any questions or suggestions, because this is a fairly new thing to do in a YouTube video for me, leave them in the comments below. Let me know what you think. Or I am building up the list of games I'm going to be benchmarking, preferably games that have built-in benchmarks. Thank you very much. Put those games in the description below for me. Let me know what games you'd like me to benchmark for reviews so that I can build up a list. I'm going to keep all these numbers and we're going to start comparing as time goes on. Anyway, I'll see you guys on Sunday. Don't forget the PC giveaway stream, where the PC is going to be built live on stream by Artesian Builds, is on Monday. And it should be starting around 6 p.m. Central Time, 4 p.m. Pacific Time. You gotta be there. The giveaway PC is gonna be built live on stream. It does not get any better than that. Make sure to enter at the link in the description below. Enter every way you can, and I will see you guys for the Sunday video, Sunday stream, and get subscribed. There's a lot of really cool content, including PAX East content, potentially. So get subscribed, and I'll see y'all very soon. Till then, take care.